You were born on a freezing February morning in 1851 in a cellar dwelling beneath a crumbling tenement in Bermondsey, one of London's most desperate slums. Your mother, weak from childbirth and hunger, wrapped you in newspaper because there were no proper blankets. The midwife who delivered you was paid with the family's last shilling, money that should have gone toward bread. Your first breath was thick with coal smoke and the stench of the tanneries that lined the Thames. Above you, in the single room your family called home, your three older siblings huddled together for warmth. Your father, a dock labourer, had not worked in 2 weeks. The Thames was frozen, and with it, his wages. The walls of your cellar home wept with moisture. The cesspool from the shared privy outside seeped through the brickwork, leaving dark stains that never dried. Your mother told you later, when you were old enough to understand, that 2 of your siblings had been born before you, but died before their first birthdays. Cholera had taken one. The other simply faded away, a victim of what the neighbours called failure to thrive, though everyone knew it was starvation with a gentler name. By the time you turned 5, you understood hunger as intimately as you understood your own name, Nell. Breakfast, when it came, was a crust of bread softened in weak tea. The bread was always grey, stretched with chalk and alum to make it go further. Your mother said the bakers did it to make the flour whiter, but you could taste the grit between your teeth. Your father's work was irregular, dependent on the tides and the arrival of ships. On good weeks, he might bring home 8 shillings. On bad weeks, and there were many, he brought home nothing but the smell of gin and despair. Your mother took in piecework, sewing shirts for a middleman who paid her 2pence for 12 hours of labour. Her fingers bled onto the white fabric, and she had to wash the stains out with water from the communal pump. The same pump that served 200 souls and stood just feet from the overflowing privy. You learned quickly that childhood was a luxury you could not afford. At 6 years old, you became a mudlark. Each morning, before dawn, you would creep down to the Thames with a burlap sack and join the army of children who scavenged the riverbank at low tide. The mud was thick and black, sucking at your bare feet with each step. In winter, it was cold enough to make your bones ache. In summer, the stench was overwhelming. Sewage, dead animals, and the chemical waste from the tanneries mixed into a soup of filth. But within that filth were treasures. A bent nail could fetch a farthing, a piece of coal, a halfpenny. Once, you found a copper button that earned you a whole penny, enough to buy a hot eel from the street cellar, which you shared with your youngest brother, Tommy. The work was dangerous. The river police would chase you away if they caught you, though usually they looked the other way. More dangerous were the older mudlarks, boys of 12 or 13 who would beat smaller children and steal their findings. You learned to hide your treasures in your mouth, swallowing river water and worse, to protect the nail or bit of rope that might mean the difference between eating and going to bed hungry. The Thames was your schoolroom, and it taught you harsh lessons. You watched a boy named Jack get swept away by the incoming tide. He'd ventured too far out, too focused on a promising piece of metal to notice the water rising. They never found his body. You learned to read the river's moods, to know when to run for shore. When you turned 7, your luck changed, though whether it was good luck or bad, you weren't certain. A woman named Mrs. Blackwood, who ran a match factory in Whitechapel, came looking for small hands. Your mother, desperate for the steady wage, sent you to work there. The factory was hell made manifest. The air was thick with white phosphorus fumes that made your jaw ache and your teeth loosen. You worked 14 hours a day, dipping wooden splints into trays of phosphorus paste. Your hands turned yellow, then developed sores that wouldn't heal. The girl who worked beside you, Sarah, was 15 and already dying of phossy jaw. Her jawbone was rotting from the inside out, and the smell of her decay competed with the chemical reek of the factory. But the work paid 4 shillings a week, more money than you'd ever seen. You brought it home to your mother with pride, and for the first time in your memory, there was meat on Sunday. Sheep's head, boiled until the eyes turned milky white, but meat nonetheless. The factory foreman, Mr. Grimsby, was a corpulent man who smelled of tobacco and sweat. He would walk between the rows of working girls, his cane tapping against the floorboards. If your production slowed, if you stopped to cough or wipe your burning eyes, the cane would crack across your shoulders. You learned to work through the pain, to breathe shallowly, to become invisible. At night, you would return to the cellar dwelling, your clothes reeking of phosphorus. Your mother would heat water, a luxury when coal could be found, and you would wash away the day's poison. But it never truly left. You could taste it in your food, smell it in your hair. You began to dream of fire, of matches igniting spontaneously and consuming everything. Then came the winter of 1859, when you were 8 years old. Tommy, now 6, started coughing. It was a wet, rattling cough that kept the whole family awake. Your mother brewed him tea with honey, an extravagance that cost 3 precious pennies, but the cough persisted. Within a week, he was burning with fever. The doctor cost a shilling for a home visit, a shilling your family didn't have. Your father, in a rare moment of sobriety, pawned his only coat to pay for it. The doctor, a young man who held a handkerchief to his nose the entire time he was in your cellar, diagnosed consumption and prescribed rest, fresh air, and nutritious food. Your mother laughed bitterly after he left. Rest? In a cellar where 6 people slept in one room? Fresh air, when the windows were sealed against the cold and the only ventilation came from the cracks in the walls? Nutritious food, when you were living on bread and dripping? Tommy died 3 weeks later. You held his hand as he took his last shuddering breath, his small body burning with fever despite the freezing temperature of the room. Your father sold Tommy's body to the medical school for 3 shillings. You hated him for it, but you understood. The 3 shillings paid for his burial in a pauper's grave and left enough for a week's worth of bread. The grief nearly broke your mother. She stopped eating, stopped speaking. Your father's drinking worsened. The family's income, dependent on your mother's sewing and your factory wages, barely covered the rent. The landlord, Mr. Jessup, was not a patient man. When the eviction notice came, you were 9 years old. You had one choice: the workhouse. The Bermondsey Union Workhouse loomed like a prison, which in many ways it was. The receiving officer, a pinch-faced woman named Mrs. Hobbs, separated your family immediately. Your father went to the men's ward, your mother to the women's. You and your remaining siblings were sent to the children's section. You were stripped, scrubbed with carbolic soap that burned your phosphorus-damaged skin, and dressed in a rough workhouse uniform. Your hair, your beautiful dark hair that your mother used to braid, was cropped short to prevent lice. You looked in the cracked mirror and saw a stranger, a grey ghost in grey clothes. The work in the workhouse was deliberately degrading. You picked oakum, unraveling old rope fiber by fiber until your fingers bled. The work was monotonous, endless, and served no purpose except to punish you for the crime of being poor. You worked in silence. Talking was forbidden. The only sounds were the scraping of rope fibers and the occasional sob from a younger child who had forgotten the rule. But in that misery, you found an unexpected gift. A Quaker woman named Miss Agnes ran a ragged school in the workhouse. 3 evenings a week, she taught reading and writing to any child who wished to learn. Most children came for the extra ration of bread she offered, but you came for the words. You devoured them. Within months, you could read simple passages from the Bible. Within a year, you were reading newspapers that visitors left behind. The words opened a window in the gray walls of your existence. You read about places beyond London, about people who lived in houses with multiple rooms, about children who went to proper schools. Miss Agnes noticed your hunger for learning. She brought you books, cast-offs from wealthy families, and you read them by candlelight, risking punishment for staying up past the mandated bedtime. You read Oliver Twist and recognized your own life in its pages. You read Jane Eyre and dared to imagine a different future. When you turned 12, Miss Agnes made you an offer. She knew a family in Bloomsbury, respectable people, who needed a scullery maid. The wages were small, but you would have room and board, and Miss Agnes had secured a promise that you could attend a charity school 2 afternoons a week. You left the workhouse on a gray March morning, your few possessions tied in a bundle. You didn't say goodbye to your parents. Inmates were forbidden from fraternizing between wards. But as you walked through the workhouse gates, you turned back once. Your mother was at a window in the women's ward, her hand pressed against the glass. You raised your hand in farewell, and she nodded. The house in Bloomsbury was a revelation. It had 3 floors, indoor plumbing, and gas lighting. You slept in a narrow bed in the attic, a bed you didn't have to share, and ate your meals in the servants' hall. The work was hard, scrubbing pots, hauling coal, cleaning grates, but you had enough to eat, and you were warm. Years passed. You grew from a girl into a young woman. You attended the charity school faithfully, learning arithmetic and composition. You saved your wages, penny by penny, in a tin box under your bed. And you never forgot the cellar in Bermondsey, the Thames mud, the phosphorus factory, or Tommy's last breath. On your 21st birthday, you had saved enough money to rent a small room of your own. It was humble, a single room on the 3rd floor of a boarding house, but it had a window that let in sunlight, and it was yours. That night, you sat at the small table you'd purchased second-hand and wrote your story. You wrote about the mudlarks and the match girls, about the children in the workhouses and the families in the slums. You wrote because you had survived, and because so many hadn't. You wrote so that their lives, brief and brutal as they were, would not be forgotten. You wrote because words had saved you, and perhaps they could save others. The candle burned low as you finished the last page. Outside your window, London rumbled on, a city built on the backs of children like you, the great unwashed, the mudlarks, the invisible poor. But you were invisible no longer. You had found your voice in the darkness, and you would use it to speak for those who had none.